I'm a 23-year-old woman, and my boyfriend, who's 24, absolutely loves my boobs. Now, before you think this is something creepy, it's really not. He's not harassing me or being inappropriate. It's just that he really enjoys touching them, whether it's grabbing, kissing, squeezing, or holding. Anytime I get undressed in front of him, he's there. He runs over, cups them, and plants a kiss on each one. Sometimes it's sweet and even funny. But other times, especially when I'm about to get my period, it's painful. I have bad PMS. And right before my period, my boobs get so sore that it feels like they're about to fall off. They become swollen, tender, and the last thing I want is someone touching them. I've explained this to him before, and most of the time, he remembers to back off. But there are times when he forgets. One day when I was deep in the throes of PMS, he literally jumped off the bed and ran over to give them a squeeze. It hurt so much that I yelped. My boobs were unbearably sore. I told him to stop, and he did for the moment. But later that same day, he did it again. I was so frustrated. Now, I've developed this habit where I try not to undress in front of him because, well, he always seems to demand booby kisses, and it's become kind of miserable. I just don't understand why he's so obsessed with them, or why he struggles to listen when I tell him it hurts. Should I just stop getting undressed around him altogether? My wife and I have been married for 10 years and together for 12. We've built a seemingly perfect life. Financial stability, shared values, strong social ties, and even a beautiful 3-year-old boy. Our income, responsibilities, and expenses are split equally, and everything seemed to be moving smoothly. Sure, life felt like it was on easy mode recently, as she described it, but I never thought it was a problem. In fact, we were in such a good place that I believed we were set for life. We live in a major East Coast city in the U.S., own a home and a car, and have advanced degrees. Our families get along well, and we host both sets of parents several times a year. We're also aligned in our political and ethical beliefs, and I thought that meant our relationship had a solid foundation. Our conflicts, when they did arise, were rare, maybe 3 times a year, and they never escalated. We simply gave each other space, and after a few days, things went back to normal. There was no yelling, no fights, and certainly no violence. I thought this was how healthy relationships worked. Then, last month, my wife dropped a bombshell on me. Out of nowhere, she told me that she wasn't in love with me anymore and was planning to leave. At first, I didn't believe her. I thought it was some sort of joke or a way to push me into changing something. But as the reality sank in, I realized she was serious. She's moving out next month, and our son will be splitting time between us. The future I thought was certain is suddenly falling apart. I've tried everything to save our relationship. I've suggested counseling, time apart, even opening up the marriage to see other people if that's what she needed. I've tried focusing on treating each other with more care and affection, but she's rejected all of it. No matter what I suggest, she just repeats the same thing. I'm not in love anymore. It's been like talking to a brick wall. She says she's no longer attracted to me, which hit me like a punch in the gut. Sure, our romantic feelings might not be as intense as they were at the beginning, but I thought that was just the natural course of marriage. I believed that with time, passionate love evolves into a deeper bond of companionship and friendship. I didn't realize that she felt differently until recently. We still had a healthy sex life about 10 times a week, which made her sudden lack of attraction even more shocking. We did have disagreements about sex in the past, mainly about frequency. We eventually settled on about 2.5 hours a week of dedicated sexy time, which seemed like a good compromise. She even joked that I should find a younger woman to satisfy me. When my drive didn't seem to slow down like she thought it should, I laughed it off at the time, but now I'm starting to wonder if there was more truth in her words than I realized. In my mind, a strong relationship is built on shared experiences. Early in our relationship, we traveled the world, took month-long vacations to exotic places, ran marathons together, played video games, and cooked meals side by side. Everything we did together was overwhelmingly positive. I thought these experiences had created a bond that would last forever. When we decided to have a child, we made a promise to each other that we'd stay together until our kid turned 18, no matter what. Now, looking back, that agreement feels naive, but at the time it made sense. It gave me a sense of security, but after she got pregnant, everything shifted. Our relationship didn't just stop being a priority, it fell out of the top 10 entirely. Work, childcare, her hobbies, and her extended family became the center of her world. I noticed the change and tried to make time for us to be alone together, but she was distant. Even something like attending a friend's wedding felt like a burden to her. I thought it was a phase. I kept telling myself that once our son got older, things would go back to the way they were, but the distance between us kept growing. I should mention that she's been acting depressed, complaining more and more about her job and life in general. She also started to express frustration about the lack of help with childcare. I tried stepping up when our son was a baby, but he preferred her. I figured that was natural. Now that he's older, he's more willing to spend time with me. And I've offered to help more by taking on tasks like making his school lunches, dressing him and walking him to school. But even with those offers, she's been reluctant to accept my help. I'm lost and don't know how to move forward. My first goal is to find a way for us to stay together and rebuild our relationship. I want us to stay together as a family for our son's sake and for ours. But if that's not possible, then my second goal is to create the best possible future for our son, even if that means we'll be raising him separately. I never saw this coming, and I can't figure out where I went wrong. Was I overlooking something this whole time? And now, how do I navigate this new reality, especially when the person I thought I'd spend my life with seems so far away from me? I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I've been with my boyfriend, who's 29, for 6 years. We've been in a long-distance relationship, but everything was going well, or so I thought. We had plans to get married. I even arranged to visit him in May, and he made sure I gathered all the necessary paperwork to get married in his country. But when I got there, he didn't marry me. I was confused. I asked him why he made me go through all the trouble of getting the marriage documents, and why he promised to marry me if he wasn't going to follow through. That's when he told me the reason. He didn't like how much I was eating. He said I was eating the same amount as him, and he wouldn't marry me unless I stopped eating so much and lost weight. He even said he didn't want me to end up like my mom. The thing is, we've been together for 6 years, and he knows I love food. I also know I'm not even that overweight. I'm 5'7", and weighed 67 kilos when we were together. Now that I'm back home, he's been monitoring my weight every day, asking what I'm eating. I've even lost weight. Now I'm 60 kg. I keep telling him I'm not fat, that my weight is normal, but he insists that he wants me to look the way I did when we first met. He says there's nothing wrong with having standards. This has been weighing on my mind ever since I got home. I even asked him, if I gain weight, will you not marry me? What if I gain weight during pregnancy? Would you leave me? His response, he told me that pregnancy is no excuse to eat a lot, and there are plenty of women who don't gain weight when they're pregnant. I'm at a loss. I don't know how to handle this anymore. I've thought about it for so long, and I feel stuck. I know he loves me after 6 years. I'm sure of that, but I'm starting to feel like maybe he can't love me at my worst. I'm a freshman in college, and I was visiting my mom over break when I noticed a crystal from my old room on display. Curious, I asked her about it, and that's when she told me the rest of my rock collection was gone, sold at a yard sale. For some context, my parents were moving around the same time I was getting ready to head off to college, so the house was in a state of chaos. I've been collecting rocks for about 10 years, and my collection meant the world to me. Some of the rocks were gifts from old friends and family, others I had found on special trips. In total, the collection was worth over $1,000, but their true value to me was sentimental. Since the collection took up 2 cabinets, I knew I couldn't take it with me to my dorm, so I packed them up, thinking my brother, who also likes rocks, could look after them until I was able to get them back. Apparently, while I was away, my brother picked through the boxes, keeping only the ones he wanted, and told my mom to sell the rest. My aunt and mother also took a few they liked, and then hundreds of rocks I had spent years collecting were either sold or donated. I didn't receive any of the money, nor was I even informed. When I found out, I broke down into tears. I know they're just rocks, but they brought me so much joy, and I can't believe they're just gone. Writing this now is bringing tears to my eyes all over again. My mom feels really sorry, and I don't blame anyone for what happened, but I'm crushed. I don't know how to cope with this loss without taking it out on my family. I'm not mad at them. I just wish I had been clearer about how much those rocks meant to me. I don't want my family to think I'm angry, but I'm struggling to hold everything in. After thinking it over, I realized they didn't intend to steal from me. They just assumed I was giving the rocks away. It wasn't malicious, just a misunderstanding. And I think I'm struggling to be mad because my mom and I have a really good relationship. She's always been the person I can rely on, and I hope this situation doesn't change that. When I first wrote this, I wasn't sure what to do. I was even debating asking for compensation, but I felt guilty since my parents are already paying for my college. I decided to talk to them about how much the collection meant to me and what I had spent on it over the years. Finally, I sat down with my parents, and through tears, I explained the memories attached to each rock and asked if they could compensate me for the loss. To my surprise, they were completely understanding. They apologized and admitted it was their fault. They even agreed to help me get the rocks back from my aunt and brother. My mom had already rounded up the ones she took. They also offered to take me rock shopping. For the rest of the weekend, I'm here. It's been such an emotional day, and I never expected this outcome. My dad even said he was proud of me for speaking up the way I did. I'm going to feel a mix of sadness and anger for a while, but at least it's not bottled up inside anymore. Thanks to everyone who pushed me to talk to them. I don't think I could have done it without your support. I'm not saying I was some sort of mix between George Clooney and Ryan Gosling, but with my soft features and the career I had, I was definitely a catch. The real problem, though, was that looks meant everything to Hannah. From early on in our relationship, I knew she sought validation through her physical appearance. Honestly, I blamed her parents for that. In our first year of dating, she told me about how her dad once refused to put up her school photos because of her acne. He patted her head and said, "Don't take it personally, honey. It's not your fault your acne's so disgusting." It was no wonder she had such a toxic obsession with her looks. Even after her skin cleared up, the self-esteem issues remained. It's ironic in a grim sort of way. With her long, golden curls and piercing brown eyes, Hannah never had to buy her own drinks. She always made sure to be the center of attention, and sometimes it was corrosive. There was one night at a gala dinner where the senior partners at my firm practically broke their necks trying to get a better look at my Cesare suit and Yachtmaster Rolex with its black dial and rotatable bezel. If Hannah hadn't come to that event, none of it would have mattered. But the next morning, I woke up to find a fist-sized tear under the lapel of my jacket, and 2 buttons were missing. In the months that followed Adelini Gate, she made sure to attend every cocktail party and charity ball, always wearing the flashiest dress, her hair done up in perfect curls. With a glass of champagne in hand, she'd refer to herself as my trophy wife or the winning lottery ticket that blew into my hand. Her remarks started to wear me down. Bit by bit, she talked as if I was some hideous creature she'd done a favor by marrying. So one night when she made another "don't you think you're punching above your weight" comment in front of everyone, I casually replied, "Actually, I reckon we're about even looks-wise." The room went silent. Someone even choked on their shrimp tartlet. Hannah didn't explode right away. She saved that for when we got home, but when she did, it was a full-on storm. She screamed and shouted, not because I'd embarrassed her, but because I had dared to suggest we were on equal footing physically. 30 minutes of rage later, with furniture strewn across the floor, she finally said, "Fine, we're even. You're the window dressing and the breadwinner in this relationship. Congratulations." Then she slammed the bedroom door behind her. I knew things were headed in a bad direction, but by the time dawn rolled around, I just wanted sleep. I spent the night in the guest room, hoping some rest would calm her down. The next morning, she sat across from me at the breakfast counter, staring right through me. When I asked, "Everything okay?" she finished her coffee, tossed the cup in the sink, and walked out without a word. Over the next few days, things got weirder. I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The bathroom door would creak open while I was in the shower, but when I called out, no one answered. At night, I'd hear the floorboards creak, and sometimes I'd see a figure in the hallway, but by the time I turned on the light, the house was silent. I couldn't admit it to myself, but I was terrified of my own wife. It seemed ridiculous. I could bench 220, and here I was, scared of her. If my friends knew, they'd have never let me live it down. Instead of running to a hotel, I decided to make things right. One night, I walked into our room with a bouquet of roses and told Hannah that I couldn't compare to her. I said that every time we stood next to each other, people probably thought I was so ugly that my parents were related. She gave me a long, hard stare, then pulled back the bed sheets. I took that as a sign that we were back on track. But the next morning, I woke up bound to the bedposts by metal cuffs. Hannah was sitting on top of me, wearing a face mask, her hips straddling my chest. In her gloved hand, she held a glass container filled with some kind of clear liquid. She said, "I've been thinking about what you said, and you were right. We are equal." As she unscrewed the lid, the smell of the liquid filled the air, burning my nose. But if I'm not the pretty one, what do I bring? To this marriage, nothing, so I'm going to knock you down a few pegs to even things out. The container dangled directly above my head, tipping forward slowly, inch by inch as if teasing my imminent doom. My eyes caught sight of the label on the container, a yellow and black illustration of a beaker spilling, over a bare hand eating away at the flesh. Oh fuck. Panicking, I could barely speak. My voice trembled as I managed to choke out, "Hannah, please," she smiled, that same big bright smile that had melted so many men's hearts over the years. It was the last thing I saw, before the scalding liquid splashed into my eyes. Instantly it felt like an invisible swarm of ants was biting into my skin, ripping me apart. The burning was unimaginable. After that, my memories were fractured. I vaguely recall trying to claw my way across the room, screaming in agony as my lips bubbled, and feeling my eyes ooze like jelly. I have no idea if I broke free from my restraints, or if Hannah released me out of sheer boredom. The world around me was just a swirl of colors, nothing distinct. The front of my nightshirt started to burn hotter by the second. In a desperate attempt to stop the pain, I tore the shirt over my head, only to be greeted by a blinding flash of light accompanied by the sound of laughter. Hannah was watching me, amused by my suffering. I didn't realize it then, but she had also taken photos. Pictures of me ripping off my shirt and writhing in pain. In the morning, our friends would wake up to images of my distorted face, believing it was some Halloween prank, all thanks to Hannah's caption. My ugly man's got that beach bod. I screamed for help over and over again, through my disintegrating lips. No one came, my phone wasn't on the bedside table. Desperate, I crawled on my hands and knees, feeling my way through the hall. Eventually, I hit the cold tile floor of the bathroom. I knew the space well, so I made my way to the bathtub, pulling myself up using the towel rack. The shower controls were at chest height. Blind and burning alive, I frantically pressed buttons until icy water blasted me in the face, offering a brief moment of relief. But soon the shower head was yanked from its holder. Water sprayed haphazardly across my body as I felt my stomach and thighs being drenched. Hannah was recording again, this time for her Instagram story. Water fight with the hideous hubby. Love how we're still so goofy. After all these years, I collapsed over the edge of the tub, hitting the floor with a dull thud, my ribs aching from the impact. Somehow, I ended up back in the hallway, but I was lost, confused, and in agony. I knew my only chance of survival was getting hold of her phone, but how could I do that? With a few forceful shoves, Hannah pushed me into the armchair in the lounge. Her voice, soft and delicate, barely reached me through the haze of pain. She eased herself onto my lap, her arm draped across my neck. Then I heard the sound of her phone's camera clicking. She was taking a selfie while I burned alive. That was it. She had really lost it. When the flash went off, something in me snapped. I surged forward, fueled by pure instinct. Later, I learned that in the photo, my face resembled strawberry jelly, and where our cheeks touched, our skin had stretched out like melted cheese on garlic bread. Still blind, I lashed out, swiping at her. My hands made contact with her chest and arms, and the phone went spinning out of her grasp. She tried to run, but I cut her off. I knew if she got away, I'd die here. I hit her again and again. I heard bones break, teeth shatter. She clawed at me, tearing away chunks of my flesh, large enough that medics later told me my bones had been visible through the wounds. Eventually, Hannah collapsed onto the floor, groaning in pain. I reached out, my fingers brushing against her face, and I could tell the beautiful smile that had captivated so many was gone, her well-defined cheekbones erased. Then it became a desperate game of Marco Polo, with me trying to find the phone she'd lost, under the sofa. Finally, I found it. On the screen was a blurry green button. I tapped it. A concerned voice echoed from the phone. I screamed. I screamed for what felt like forever until police officers kicked down the front door. They found me, a wreck, and rushed me to the hospital. I lay in the back of the ambulance, the sirens deafening, while a paramedic promised me everything. it would be okay, that they'd save my vision. I spent 12 weeks recovering, my face covered in bandages. Meanwhile, Hannah was taken to the emergency room for a quick stop before being carted off to jail. She's awaiting trial now, and from what I hear, the other inmates have started calling her the Elephant Woman. I met my husband in college, and for over 21 years, we've built a life together full of love and companionship. We've been through both great times and hard times, but through it all, we've always been there for each other. Early in our marriage, my husband casually asked if I'd ever considered getting a boob job. At the time, I hadn't given it much thought, but it did cross my mind that growing up in a small town and working in a male-dominated field, it wasn't something I felt comfortable doing, so the topic faded into the background. For a few years, after we had kids, I felt differently about my body, and it was me who brought up the idea again. I told my husband how unhappy I was with the way I looked. He was incredibly supportive, and I decided to go for it. I went for a conservative size that I thought I'd be comfortable with, but in the end, I wasn't completely satisfied. A few years later, I opted for a second boob job, increasing the size to something that made me feel confident and happy. But things started to change when my husband began pushing for more. He kept suggesting that I get them even bigger, showing me pictures of women with implants that were much larger than mine. I'm a 34DD, and he was sharing photos of women with implants that were 2,000 to 5,000 cc. I told him I hated the look of them and couldn't imagine going that big. But the conversation persisted for years. It got to the point where he discovered expandable implants, which would allow me to fill them up over time. Despite not being interested, I eventually agreed to get 1,000 cc expanders because I knew it excited him. But I wasn't happy with them. They were uncomfortable, with hard ports for filling, and they were saline instead of silicone. My husband was thrilled, though, and kept pushing for more. Every 3 months he would ask when we could add another 100 cc. I filled them up a few times, thinking I'd stop when I felt they were the right size. But by the time I reached a FUM 400C, I couldn't take it anymore. The implants felt too big, and I had a major panic attack. I told my husband I wanted to remove the last 100cc, but he convinced me to let them calm down. First, I've managed to avoid filling them for 3 years, but the pressure never stopped. My husband has made it clear that he's not just into big boobs, he's into the world's biggest. He's constantly bringing up women with implants that are 20,000 cc, and he won't stop showing me pictures of them. I hate everything about how they look, but it's all he wants to talk about. It's gotten to the point where I feel like he needs to hear me talk about getting bigger or he can't enjoy sex. If I don't say I want them bigger, it becomes a fight. He wants me to get back on a filling schedule so I can reach 20,000 cc within 5 years. I agreed for a while because I love him, and I genuinely did want bigger breasts initially, but I don't want them any bigger now. I'm afraid we want different things, and every day he asks me, "You're really going to get that big for me, right?" If I say anything other than yes, it causes an argument. He even brings up past fights and claims he was only able to move past them because I promised I'd go bigger. It feels like an obsession, but I know you can't choose what you're attracted to. I've tried to tell him what he wants to hear, to keep the peace, but I'm exhausted. He thinks we're going to start filling again next month, but I know now that I can't keep doing this. My husband is a loving man, a great father, and he would never intentionally hurt me, but I don't think he realizes how much his infatuation with extremely large breasts is hurting me. I cry at night and sometimes during sex because it's all about my breasts and the fantasy of them growing to an unnatural size. He even finishes by watching videos of women with massive implants so he can climax. I love my husband, but I'm at a breaking point. I don't want to be his fantasy anymore. I need to have a conversation with him, but I don't know how to approach it without hurting him or starting another fight. If anyone has advice on how to bring this up in a way that will make him understand how I feel, I'd appreciate it. I don't want to lose him, but I can't keep pretending this is okay. It's funny how life sometimes works out in ways we don't expect. My partner and I, well, we didn't have the most storybook beginning, but that doesn't mean it wasn't special in its own way. I'm 29 and he's 27, and we've been together for over a year now. It's been one of the most transformative, joyful, and meaningful relationships I've ever had. We've done so much together in the past year, moved across the country, explored new cities and places, met new people, and embraced different lifestyles. Every day with him feels like an adventure, and I've never felt so seen or understood by anyone. I honestly can't believe how lucky we are to have found each other. He's truly wonderful, and I remind myself of that every day. But despite how happy we are now, I can't completely shake off how we started. I guess you could say it wasn't the most ideal or fair beginning for either of us. After breaking off an engagement with my ex-fiancé, I found myself unable to let go of the attachment, and instead of processing that loss in a healthy way, I latched onto my current partner. In a lot of ways, he was a rebound. I was still dealing with the emotional fallout from my previous relationship, and unfortunately, I shifted those feelings onto him. It was messy, and for the first few months, it was far from healthy. I was clingy and emotionally dependent, while he was guarded, understandably hesitant. I recognize now that my behavior at the time was toxic, and I've since worked through it by attending CODA, Codependence Anonymous, and other 12-step programs. Those resources have been incredibly helpful in allowing me to grow, learn about myself, and break those unhealthy patterns. But then something amazing happened. Somewhere along the way, after a lot of introspection, praying, and meditating, things shifted between us. We fell in love, truly and deeply. It felt like a new beginning. Since then, it's been mostly blissful. We've built something real, something grounded in mutual respect, affection, and joy. Every day feels like a gift with him, and I'm incredibly grateful for what we share. Still, part of my healing process has involved getting over my ex. While I was already in a relationship with my current partner, I've tried to be as honest with him as I can be about my journey, although I don't bring it up too often, only when it feels necessary. He's been understanding, and we've been able to move forward together. But sometimes when I reflect on how we started, I feel a bit uneasy about it. It's like a lingering guilt, even though things are so much better now. I love this man deeply and can see myself spending the rest of my life with him. He's everything I could ask for in a partner, and I want to build a future together. But I wonder sometimes, does the way we started matter in the long run? Can a relationship that began as a rebound evolve into something lasting and beautiful, or will this always be a defining part of our story? I haven't been in a relationship for more than 2 years before, so this is new territory for me. I hope that with time, the beginning won't matter as much, and we'll continue to grow stronger together. I'm just looking for hope, for reassurance from others who have had similarly rocky beginnings, but went on to build something truly meaningful and lasting. Will the way we started eventually fade into the background, or is it something I'll always carry with me?